Yep, sure will. Give everybody a minute to connect to their audio.
You can let us know when everybody's in.
Okay, Judge, it looks like we're set and we're live on YouTube. Take it away. Welcome, everyone.
Where are the funny graphics that are supposed to be here? Welcome everyone. It looks like we have almost 100 people watching on, so your interest is appreciated, as will be your input. We just thought, the judges just thought, and the court staff, it would be good to get together again like we did last time, because of this unique nature of how we're administering justice during the pandemic, and to update you on where we're going. We listened to you last time. We've issued some orders consistent with what people suggested that we hope made life a little more easy and convenient for you. And I want to address the issue of civil trials, which was raised rather adamantly and regularly last time. And I want to address that issue. Let me just first begin by thanking you all. Our district has remained up and operational fully and completely during this pandemic, in large part because of this outstanding staff of the district court and the work that they've done to get us there. But it's also in large part to the cooperation that we've received from the bar. We appreciate your understanding. We appreciate your cooperation. We appreciate your suggestions on how we can do better. So thank you all for that. It has really meant a lot. I talk with a lot of other chief judges throughout the country, and I must say that that our district has been running incredibly smoothly from our perspective, even more so than most other districts, and that's because of the great staff we have, and also because of the wonderful bar. So thank you all for that. So we are proceeding and continue to proceeding fully electronically, remotely. Everything that I told you about last time continues. Our staff is almost entirely working from home remotely. Phones are still forwarded, email is still forwarded, communication is still exactly as it always was before that. We intend to continue for the foreseeable future. I would venture to guess likely through the end of the year in general. We also heard last time about the issue of the concern of the lack of civil jury trials, and therefore matters not moving perhaps as quickly as the bar might like it to be, and also because the parties want their day in court, certainly. So the judges have met, and we've determined that, a little out of order from what we usually do, where criminal cases get priority, that we're going to begin in our district with civil trials. I'll just tell you briefly that we're attempting to get ready for criminal trials in January. Much more difficult. You need 12 jurors, a couple of alternates, a lot more people. The logistics is much more difficult. So at Judge Smith, who's headed up our reopening program, and his recommendation, we've agreed that we're going to begin with civil jury trials. We're going to begin with them in October and have them in October and November and perhaps December. The three district judges have all agreed to issue a combined calendar call and a combined trial calendar. We intend to have one trial courtroom that we'll use because we think it works the best with following proper public health guidelines. And I think Judge Smith may speak to the practicalities of that a little more, that he and Frank have studied and implemented. But our intent is to hold a calendar call with all cases that are ready for civil trial collectively, Judge McElroy, Judge Smith, and I, via Zoom, obviously. And that should get out, I think, within the next few days, that calendar call. And then I forget the date that it will be held, but it will be held shortly. We'll then determine the status of all the cases that we have set for trial, as we usually do during a calendar call. And then we'll establish a trial calendar from that. And here's where things are going to be slightly different. We've had the privilege and the benefit of being able to have date certains, and be able to have one trial at a time, and well in advance when your trial is going to start. We're not going to be able to do that anymore. One, because of the backup, and two, because of our limited trial resources. So we're going to set a number of cases, civil cases, for trial on the same day. And as if history is any indication of the future, some will go away. And as they go away, the next one is going to have to be ready to start that very day, even though there may have been 4 or 5 on the calendar. We'll speak more about this during the calendar call for those that are affected. We hope to be able to do 2 trials in October, one at the beginning and one in the middle. We're working now on, I think, is Mike Simon Salis? Yeah, Mike. I think today or tomorrow, jury summonses will go out. We've added a slightly more extensive questionnaire to the initial jury notice that goes out. We're trying to see if we can't weed out more people than we normally would before they enter the courthouse, so that we can bring less people into the courthouse for jury selection, having weeded out what are the usual and traditional people that get excused when they come anyway. So that process will be beginning, and will play out. We don't have the protocol yet for jury selection. Maybe Judge Smith will speak to that a little bit more in a second too, but we're going to work on that. We may try and do some by Zoom. We may not. We don't yet know how jury selection will work, but we'll have good, solid public health procedures in place for it, as we will for any trial. And then we'll continue that again in October, twice in November, and hopefully clear a big backlog of cases that are ready for civil jury trials. But trials will happen again. They will happen again in October. So if you thought you bought yourself a whole lot of time, or if you were upset that you thought there'd be a whole lot of time, depending on your perspective, October is D-Day in that regard. So I think with that, maybe Judge Smith, I apologize, I'm calling on you blindly, but I didn't know if you wanted to talk at all about a little more of the specifics and the work that you've done about where we are with public health protocols and how we're going to implement this. And then we'll turn it over to any of the other judges for comments, a little bit from the clerk's office, and then we'll open it up for input, questions, and answers. Judge Smith?
Sure. I think Judge McConnell, well, first of all, I think he's really getting the hang of this whole chief judge thing. It's like he's very smooth. This is very organized. He really covered the waterfront with that. I think he's got the, I don't really have too much to add. We have the courtroom 3, which is the courtroom I'm using now that Judge McConnell used to use, is the one that we're going to use for civil trials. We've got it all set up right now. It looks great. We will use the new conference room, which many of you have probably not seen, which is adjacent to the courtroom, and some of you might remember it as Judge Pateen's chambers, and some of you might remember it as where, in sort of Rhode Island fashion, we might say where Barry Mitchell used to be. But that's now a beautiful new conference room, and it's very large, and I think it will serve as an excellent jury deliberation room. If for any reason we can't use that, we can use the jury assembly room down on the first floor. So we think we've got a really good setup for trial in that courtroom, and that will be our primary go-to place for for civil trials. And that
Mr.
will
Smith, can you tell folks a little? I forgot to mention the the fact that the grand jury's been going on, and maybe
Yeah.
talk a little about that and how well it's working.
Yeah, so the grand jury has been meeting now for about, I think, 4 or 5 weeks, a couple times a week. And Frank has done a really fantastic job in just setting the whole place up, getting the protocols in place, the social distancing both in the room and as jurors come in each day. I've been here to watch it. It's just been it's been terrific, and enough time has passed that we feel pretty good about it, in the sense of, we haven't had any reports of anyone coming down with the virus or having any adverse effects from being here. So that's been really a great beta test, I think, of how we can bring people back into the courtroom and do it effectively. Because for the grand jury, we need to have 16 at a minimum in the room, and we've had more than that for those meetings. So the fact that we can bring them together, and we're very strict about the amount of time they're allowed to be in the room. They have to leave for a break, and then the room sort of settles and the air recirculates. And so we've been following those protocols very carefully. And the other thing that this shows us is that the jury assembly room acts as kind of a fallback, all-purpose room, and that could mean that we could use it as a courtroom. And we're working with IT to make some adjustments to that room so that it could be used as a courtroom if we needed to be. And the beauty of the jury assembly room is, there are a couple things. One is it's extremely versatile in the way we can move furniture. All the furniture is modular. We can move things around, set it up any way we need to set it up. So it's really good from that standpoint. It also has its own air handling system, just as courtrooms, all the courtrooms do as well. So that's really good. Down the road, as we said to the criminal bar yesterday, we hope to, when we get to criminal jury trials, we hope to do those in courtroom 1. And the reason for that is that we have a lot more space to work with in courtroom 1, because we can remove some of the benches and we can really expand the size of the jury, the footprint that the jury will sit in when we take those benches out. So, but there's a courtroom technology upgrade going on right now, and that will take a number of weeks to get completed in courtroom 1. And then there'll be some training time as well. So, and the good news is, I think we don't have any pressing criminal cases that look like they have to go to trial during the fall. So this is lining up. It's lining up pretty well for us.
Can you maybe just mention a little about Professor Bromage and the work that you've done with a public health expert?
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate to have Aaron Bromage, who's a biology professor and a specialist in infectious disease, and has become a bit of a sensation on cable news, and he's been all over the media. It's remarkable, because he started a blog that became very, very popular about understanding the risks of the virus and knowing how to respond to them. And interestingly, he's as a result of the work that he has done here and a program that he and I did together for the Federal Judicial Center, which was then broadcast to all the federal courts around the country. He has become a consultant now to a whole bunch of federal courts all around the country. So he's working with New Hampshire, Maine, New Jersey. Next week he'll be out in the Central District of California, which is, I think, one of the largest, maybe the largest district in the country. And So we started with him first. We've been utilizing all of his advice, and then he'll be coming back, and hopefully, he'll gain a lot of knowledge. He was up this week. They had a criminal jury trial in New Hampshire this week. He went up to attend part of that trial just to watch it unfold. So we'll continue to gain the benefits of his knowledge over the next weeks and months, and rely on that. So it's been really, really helpful. I won't go into all the weeds about how and why, but understanding a lot more about how air handling and air exchange works, and the kinds of steps that we can take that are effective, and some things that that people talk about that really aren't that effective. All of that has been really good to learn. As far as the jury selection, I mean, we can get into that later, maybe with those who are affected by it. We have not identified sort of how that process will work in detail at this point, but I think it'll be some combination of either Zoom or in person, maybe individual voir dire as opposed to group voir dire. So it might take a little more time than the typical voir dire that you're used to. I think our consensus is, I mean, we can talk about this, but I think our consensus is to continue to use Zoom for all manner of civil things that don't require being in the courtroom, and hearings and conferences and so forth. So maybe I'll stop there.
Great. Thanks. Judge McElroy or Sullivan or Almond want to add anything? Nope. Seeing no's all around. All right. Nora or Michael or Frank, do you want to talk operations at all, or anything you want to convey before we open it up?
I guess just a couple of things I wanted to mention. One is that for those of you who have not had an opportunity to do a Zoom hearing and you wanted to sort of kind of go through it with a member of the clerk's office staff, you can always reach out to us and we're able to provide individual training. I mean, I've done it personally for a few people in advance of a hearing just to make sure, you're comfortable on the format. I mean, obviously everyone is connecting here, but if you had any questions about how a hearing happens, obviously they're open to the public, so people can obviously tune in to watch, but we are able to offer you training of any kind. And I guess the only other thing I would mention, in building on the jury thing, the jury office is in the process of summoning jurors for the first time in sort of 6 months. So we'll be having those out to have jury panels ready for when the judges want to do the impanelments. We'll be asking jurors, obviously, additional questions about sort of possible exposure to COVID or any underlying health conditions they may have, so we can adequately, bring in a pool of people who are able to serve. So that's what I have.
Nora, do you want to mention about, and I don't know if it's up and about, but the Litigation Academy work that you and Judge Smith and Brooks and Nikki did on bench trials on Zoom? Is that accessible to people? And
Yeah, it sure is. I'm going to go in. We've had a lot of people take advantage of it already. I think we have over 150 people who've requested CLE credits for it. It's on our YouTube channel. It is currently unlisted, so you have to have the YouTube link, but we sent that out in a notice. I'm going to make it public soon so that anybody can access it, but it's 2 or 1.5 CLE credits with 0.5 an ethics credit. So it's a really it's very helpful, I think. I've gotten good feedback on it. So, but if you think differently, or if there's something else we can do, please let us know.
so why don't we, with that, just open it up to questions, comments, criticisms, suggestions, anything that's on anyone's mind, if anything. It's a content bunch. Okay.
Can I bring one thing up? And I'm
There
just
you
throwing it
go.
out there. I don't want to throw any monkey wrenches into this, but I did have an attorney recently sort of privately say to me that they had some level of hearing loss and were concerned about mask wearing in the court. So if that's an issue for someone or for their client, I think that we should, but we can figure that out either with shields or see-through masks or whatever, but maybe raise it ahead of time to the judge if there's anything like that, because I guess there's some amount of, when you have some hearing loss, there's some amount of reliance on facial expressions and lip reading that people utilize. So I'm sure that's not an issue for many people, but I throw it out there because it's something I hadn't thought of.
Yeah, and toward that end, any of those, we're in a new paradigm, folks, and we're going to have to be creative, and we're going to have to be communicative, and we're going to have to be understanding, and that's going to require both you folks and us communicating about issues like that, big or little, because we are 100% committed to keeping our staff and public and customers safe, and also doing justice appropriately, consistent with all the values that we bring to it. But it's really important that when you engage in that you are in touch with us, where everyone here is accessible, and use that, whether the issue is big or little. It should be addressed. And I'm guessing that someone will come up with a creative solution to how to deal with your problem.
I think that just caused me to think of some things that I think people should be thinking about in terms of how we might change the way we do things in the courtroom. And we will be coming up with some very explicit, specific protocols when we get to the point of the trials, but there will be some gating type criteria. So for example, if anyone shows symptoms or obviously tests positive, attorneys, witnesses, then that could derail a trial. And that's another reason for what Judge McConnell mentioned about having the trials stacked. The second thing is the trials will look a little bit different inside the courtroom because of masks, and the witness will be in a different place. We're going to move the witness box. Jurors will be spread around. You won't be using the podium anymore. You'll be questioning people from the tables. You'll have your own microphones. There won't be any sharing of microphones. All of these things are going to require some technology adjustments, or if you do use the podium to question from, there might be a need for switching out microphones. So there's just going to be a lot of these sort of logistical things that we're going to have to go through when we get to the point of actually having a trial. So just some things to think about and to keep in mind for when we get to that calendar call that we're going to have. If you have questions about these things, these are things you're going to want to be thinking about in advance. Maybe you have a witness who's immunocompromised, and that's something we need to know and talk about, because it could be that we need to set up a Zoom link in order to have that witness testify remotely, and that will require a lot of work on the part of our IT department. So when you get that notice that, and I know Mark DeSisto's on that, because I think a couple of the cases are your clients, Mark, and so these are things that people need to start thinking about. Experts who may be in other locations, they may not be able to travel to get here. So we might need to be thinking about how do we hook those people up by video and the practicalities associated with that. So really there's a whole bunch of issues that we always took for granted before that now we're going to have to spend a lot of time talking about. So we start thinking about them now.
You should know that there literally is no one more versed in the public health issues than Judge Smith is. He, from the very beginning, has taken that on, and I was thrilled that he agreed because he had to, because I asked him, right? He agreed to take on this reopening status, but it is so incredibly complicated when you get down to the nitty gritty. And he and Frank and the team have they have thought through in really smart professional fashion all of these issues. And not that there's not lots more to be determined, but so far they're building a system that I think is going to work. But you also need to think creatively. We need partners that are going to be problem solvers, not always problem identifiers or whatnot. And we're just going to have to be creative with it. One other thing, just for the, because most of you, there'll only be so many cases set for trial. And I don't know if the other judges find this. I guess I asked for a little bit of indulgence if getting civil orders out is a little slower than it's been in the past. You all may not realize that we've been hit with many requests for compassionate release from folks that we have sentenced or have been sentenced in this district for the last 20 years, or people that are in pretrial detention that are seeking a re-review. That has taken a toll on our time. And I think when one of my law clerks said to me the other day that I was a little slow in reviewing some civil matter because I was working on compassionate release, maybe I should apologize for the delays that might go on, but everyone is working full time. We just got inundated, I think, to say the least, with these requests, and they're really hard because there's medicine involved and there's risk involved, and you don't have full knowledge, and you're dealing with people's lives and risks. So they tend to take a little bit more attention than run-of-the-mill kind of motions, as well they should. So
I can't believe there are no questions. I have this feeling like there have to be.
I think Bud DeLuca is not on the call this time, which is why maybe there aren't any questions.
I think that one of the things you might have alluded to, Judge Smith, that I think that we're planning shorter trial days than is the norm.
Oh, that's right.
So when you're assessing your cases and figuring out how long they're going to take or when witnesses need to be available, you might want to look at that as well. Just if there's something we haven't thought of, it's not that we're not on purpose sort of avoiding the issue. Judge Smith has thought of pretty much everything I can imagine, but I'm sure there are things we've missed. So just keep
That's
that
that's a really important point. I'm glad you brought that up because, one thing we've learned about all this is that the air needs to turn over in spaces. And so we've got about an hour to an hour and a half where you can be in a space where people are all breathing and talking and so forth. But then we need to get everybody out of the room and let the air handling system operate for 15 minutes or more to turn the air over. And that's how we've been doing it with the grand jury. And that's on the advice of Dr. Bromage. But that's important. So we can only work for so long, then we have to take a break, and we have to make sure people are appropriately distanced when they break. And it's complicated. And when it gets a little colder, it's going to be a little more difficult. Right now, we can take people outside, and they can be in the parking lot, spaced out. And being outside obviously is great, but we're not going to be able to have juries go off to the usual jury break room, the jury room for a break. We have to have a place where they can go, and they can remain 6 feet apart. So it's it's tricky. And so shorter trial days will be part of that. See
I
Jerry.
think Jerry's got his hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. To Judge McElroy's point, talking about witnesses and masks and difficulty hearing on occasion, my question would be, will the witness testifying not have a mask so we can all observe facial expressions and so forth? With working on a shield or something else for the witness, not only because of the difficulty in hearing, but to observe the demeanor.
Yeah, the consensus seems to be everywhere that witnesses need to be unmasked. And so the witnesses will be in a witness box that will have a high plexiglass shield, but they will not have their mask on while they testify.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. I know the federal system runs its own, makes its own determinations about how they're going to handle the court procedures. Is there any coordination with the governor's office and or the state court in terms of coming up with sort of common solutions?
Well, when you say with the governor's office, we're not really working with the governor's office, but we are watching the statistics and following to a great degree the guidance of the public health folks in the administration. So if, for example, the infection rate were to spike up in a serious way and we were to start to look like Florida or Texas, and that were to lead to shutdowns, lockdowns, gathering restrictions that are more strict. So for example, I don't think this will happen, but let's say that the restrictions on gatherings was reduced to 5. Well, I think we would be in a position where we'd have to really seriously think about whether we could have a trial in that environment. And that not just because of a desire to follow the guidance, but also because what that means is when the infection rate is up like that, it's just statistically much more likely when you put all those people into a courtroom, when you have a half a dozen jurors and lawyers and court reporters and judges and so forth, you put all those people in a courtroom, statistically it becomes that much more likely that you're going to have somebody who's got the infection. So so we have to watch that, and that could change our plans. But I don't think we're going to get to the point where that happens, but we are watching it. And in terms of coordination with the state court, there really hasn't been a lot of that, not for any bad reason or anything. It's just I think that I don't think, again, I could speculate on a couple things. I don't think that they have maybe the resources that we have, and I think they have some, in certain courts there, they have matters that just have to get done. They got to find ways to get them done. But they're using WebEx, as I understand it, much the same way that we're using Zoom. I don't think they have started jury trials in the state court. I do think they have the grand jury coming back. So we haven't really been coordinating much, but I'm sure we would if there's a and just as it happens, I mean, there is a connection, as there always is in Rhode Island. There's a connection because Dr. Bromage's wife, the way we got to him, used to be my law clerk, and she's now Chief Justice Satel's career clerk. So there is a connection between the two courts in that sense.
All right, I might do going once, twice, 3 times, and then we can adjourn. again, I encourage you to continue to communicate. Our case managers are always accessible to you for any docket filing, whatever. Our IT department is willing to assist. The clerk's office is just phenomenal in their ability to give great customer service. So use those resources as you can. If there are ways we can make your professional lives a little easier, let us know and we'll see what we can do. We're all in this together. And hopefully we'll come out on the other end soon and see you all in person.
Thanks so much, Judge.
Great. All right, Nora, I think that